Hello, and welcome to the third episode of Season 2 of History Stories. I'm Dr. Megan Easley-Walsh. I'm an author, a writing consultant, and a scholar. My life is full of history and stories. I'm a dual American and Irish citizen living in Ireland, and in this season, I'm exploring connections to my novels via places in Ireland. Today, we're going to talk about my novel, Where Fortune Leads. Last November, I graduated with a diploma in archaeology from the University of Galway. Over 2 years, I studied the archaeology and history of Ireland, from the Mesolithic through the medieval era. It was a nice complement to my PhD in history, and it was also fun to be able to learn more about some of the sites that I've been able to visit here in Ireland. My favorite piece to visit in the National Museum of Archaeology in Dublin is a small golden boat from the 1st century BC. In addition to the pottery, metalwork, gold, and stone native to Ireland, there's an exciting international room, but more about that later. Until October 2025, there's also a special collection of manuscripts visiting from Switzerland that hasn't been in Ireland for over 1,000 years. One of these manuscripts is something I studied about in a class this past autumn in a course on Gaelic literature. And in addition to intricate artwork and drawings, some of the earliest lines of Irish poetry are included in the margins. Some of this poetry includes warnings against the Vikings and how the weather, which Ireland is still quite famous for being rather rainy, will protect the monks from the Vikings being able to arrive on that night. Another room in the National Museum of Archaeology that is part of the permanent collection is dedicated to a place important to both Charles Treacher and his father Joseph in my novel, Where Fortune Leads. This is the exciting international room I was talking about. This room is Egypt. Egypt is a place that has defined much of the Treacher legacy, and that beckons to both Charles and Arthur in individual ways in the story. Inside of the room in the real-life museum, there are a host of Egyptian treasures to discover, including a boat. Unlike the golden boat downstairs in the museum that I spoke to you about from the 1st century BC, the Egyptian boat is much larger, and it includes people inside of it. The entire room gives the feeling of walking into a hidden tomb, and I can imagine the characters in Where Fortune Leads being very excited at the finds inside. I know that for me, it's always very atmospheric. There's even elements of sand incorporated into the displays, and it really feels like you're walking into one of those 1920s or 1930s Egyptian displays when all the world was ablaze in Egyptomania, when movie theaters began being designed in this way, and when black eyeliner became all the rage. Why? Because that's what the pharaohs wore. If it was good enough for them, it was good enough for the stars discovering it for the first time. As a historian, I rely upon historical documentation. As an author, historical documentation provides texture and color to the settings and plots of my novels. In Where Fortune Leads, brothers Charles and Arthur interact with tools of documentation. Charles uncovers the past via his work in archaeology, while Arthur is a photographer. In what way are you preserving the past? Maybe this is through remembering stories that your grandparents told you, or passing along family heirlooms. Maybe it's in educating yourself on little-known local stories, or by supporting a museum. However you engage with history, may it be as exciting for you as it is for the characters in Where Fortune Leads, when they look into the historical and archaeological past to uncover hidden secrets. Here's some about Where Fortune Leads. Worldwide adventure in a race to save a family in the 1920s, and it all begins with a fortune cookie. When Charles Treacher, archaeologist, presents his brother Arthur, a photographer, with the gift of a fortune cookie for his birthday, A course of action is set into motion that neither could have predicted. In the summer of 1922, Charles is the one who is accustomed to adventures, following in the footsteps of their father, Joseph Treacher. Arthur is content with his life in his childhood home in upstate New York, seeking out the perfect subject for his photographs. Just as a fortune cookie crumbles, so too do Arthur's plans. When Charles's business partner goes missing, the Treachers hire detectives Ava Grant and her uncle Clarence, and a round-the-world caper begins. As each person becomes a target, the race is on to save the Treachers' legacy, and also the Treachers. The gift of a fortune cookie for Arthur's birthday was completely unexpected. He had never even seen a fortune cookie before. In episode 10 of season 1, Maps, Cookies, Money, and Fortune, we discover where fortune cookies actually came from. We also look at the skyrocketing money and inflation under Weimar Germany. These are some of the historical stories and backdrops against which the story Where Fortune Leads unfolds. And now, here are the words at the end of this episode to start at the very beginning of Where Fortune Leads. Quote, June 14th, 1922, upstate New York. The metallic clink of the knife against the crystal goblet drew the room's attention. Conversation, which had flowed as freely as the lemonade had through tonight's dinner, now quieted as all eyes turned. To my brother Arthur, on this your 25th birthday, Charles Treacher said, raising his glass. To Arthur, those gathered answered, as their glasses rose in like fashion. Sunlight, pouring through the windows, danced across the cut crystal, throwing its own array of color as confetti on the celebration. Now, Charles said, unwilling to relinquish the role of spokesman on his younger brother's birthday, I have a present for you. Charles, their mother cut across, we're going to have Arthur open his presents later in the parlor. That will be much better, don't you think? She turned her attention toward Arthur and nodded with a smile on her face. Yes, it was his birthday, but it was his family's celebration. They had all made that quite clear. Before Arthur could answer for himself, Charles spoke again. Actually, Mother, this is a present that is better suited to the table. Her eyebrows rose, signaling that some question or protest would now attempt to squeeze itself through her lips. Patting his wife's arm, Joseph said, Ah, Cora, it's all right. Let the boys have a bit of fun. Even as he said it, though, he knew that their sons could hardly be described as boys any longer. Charles, who had every intention of carrying through with his own plans, now drew a painted box from behind his back. Arthur sat forward, prepared to take the box that had captured his curiosity from his brother's hand. Charles made no attempt to give Arthur his present, and instead lifted the lid off the painted box himself. He's forgotten that the birthday person is the one who is supposed to open the present. What Charles drew from the box pulled Arthur from his musing and plunked him squarely in the grasp of curiosity. In his hand, Charles cradled a small parcel, a fraction of the size of the painted box he had pulled it from. Cora leaned forward to better inspect what her son held. Even Joseph, usually reserved and dignified, fidgeted with his pocket. Knowing his father's intention, Charles dissolved the mystery. You needn't reach for your magnifying glass, Father. I will tell all of you. Now Charles passed the present to Arthur. The curtains ruffled in the evening breeze as Arthur's hands moved across the elegant wrapping and began to peel back the layers. If Charles intended for Arthur to feel unique in his birthday fortune, he failed miserably as he reached back into the painted box. Like a magician pulling a rabbit from his hat, he produced 3 more parcels. Passing them around the table to his parents, he put the last in front of himself, and then turned to Arthur. A bemused expression had settled over his features. What is it? Arthur said, looking down at what appeared to be a sculpted bit of confection. It is called, Charles said, spreading his arms in a flare of dramatics, and his voice following suit, a fortune cookie. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, happy reading. May fortune shine on you, and I'll see you in the next episode of History Stories.